This is Paul McGann, the 8th Doctor. You're listening to Gallifrey Public Radio. Go and throw yourself under a bus. I didn't mean to say that. He told me to say that.
This is Gallifrey Public Radio, dedicated to positive enjoyment of Doctor Who. We travel through classic and new episodes, explore the extended universe, and play a few games from time to time. We do discuss news, content that has been officially released, and the occasional interesting rumor, but we'll warn you before anything considered spoilers comes up.
Welcome to episode 525 of Gallifrey Public Radio. I'm Jay.
I'm Julie.
I'm Kier.
And I'm Haley. Today, the culmination of the newest season's mysteries and Mr. X begin to turn against our heroes in The Legend of Ruby Sunday.
And none should be more wise than the king himself.
Harry, what are you doing?
And the Lord of Time was blind and vain and knew nothing.
What is happening in there?
It's Harriet. It's like she's possessed.
Kate, who is she?
Harriet, you met her.
Yeah, I know, but what is her full name?
Harriet Harbinger.
Harbinger. The gods bring harbingers to warn us of their coming. But which god?
I think the biggest reaction that I experienced was Kier screaming and jumping off of the couch, scaring every small beast in our house, and that is my takeaway from this episode.
I vaulted off the couch. I love a good puzzle. But reader, I was surprised. That got me. I don't know. I put like the feelers out there to folks who are, really adamant watchers and stuff, and said, "Did you know anybody who cottoned onto this? Anybody that predicted it in any fashion?" And our friend Riley Silverman had said that she had come across a couple of folks who sort of stumbled across it, but it was kind of a ha, wouldn't it be funny if? And she doesn't know if there was necessarily any real basis behind it, and it was just a shotgun scatter and see if you hit it.
I don't know if you got enough of the puzzle pieces before this episode that you could have pieced it together, because I feel like really the first thing that anybody could have been like, oh, this could be spoilers, Sutek, was TARDIS Technologies, like knowing Susan as the name and having technology to put it with. But before you got that information, I don't know what was given that you could have breadcrumbed that together.
Or even things that had to do with the Egyptian mythology. I'm trying to think back now about anything that might have had references to the sarcophagi, to any of the, the Eye of Horus, or the Jewel of Horus that was used to trap him originally. That stupid chair that he was stuck in for millennia. Any of it. And I'm not, now... I think the moment this was over, the moment we were done watching and I finally got my heart rate to come back down, I was in the kitchen doing something and I'm still kind of buzzing about it, and I'm tapping on my phone and I'm messing with dishes and I'm tapping on my phone with people. And I immediately put on the final episode of Pyramids of Mars just to kind of get that right back in my head again. I'm like, I don't know where it is. But Russell, you bastard. You magnificent bastard.
The great thing was the fact that they leaned hard into the "is it Susan" aspect of it. Right from the very beginning, Ruby being like, "But I mean, the name. Come on, are you gonna?" And the Doctor buying in full cloth too. Like it was really well done in a way of being like, "Hey, focus on this, so you don't recognize what we're setting up over here that you can turn around and get surprised by."
Even within this episode.
Yeah. And it to the point where, like, when Mel is talking to her, she's like, "Call me Sue." It's like, you could have grabbed onto it from there. Like, I mean, it would have been a stretch, but it's possible. And then still, it wasn't until like right at the end when things start going that it's like, I was like, they put the name up on the screen or whatever. And before things like really start to get spelled out blatantly, I was like, oh my God, they're going Sutekh. Like
it was when the Harbinger started going through and I heard set and set. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's
Which
it.
they had to tell, literally they told you. They said at that moment, that is it. And that's when you started to vibrate. And then when they put the full name out there is when you finally kind of brought it in. But prior to that moment, I feel like even with the Sandy death, we've seen things like that before where characters will kind of, it's aged so long. We already know that the one who waits, it could still at that moment be anything that takes a long time because of it got sucked in and this is like a time jump or we don't know until that moment of here's your name, here's your ultimate god of death.
Well, and I
even listing the gods' names.
Yeah. And I was at the moment when the unit officer died thinking that they were going to bring back Time as like the bad guy who we were introduced to as an entity at the end of Flux. And I thought that would have been very Russell T Davies of him to bring in this thing that all the fans were like, no, that's not going to be canon. He's going to write it off somehow. And to be like, no, it is canon and you need to pay attention to it because it's going to be really important.
I kind of had that thought too when the Doctor is talking about like time is memory and memory is time. I was like, there's a lot of focus on that. I was like, is it? Maybe? But there was so much going on that I quickly forgot that thread.
Yeah. Well, and if that were the case, it puts the TARDIS into the moment where from Unit and Kate says, what happens if the TARDIS is the bad guy? Because it's indestructible. We know that. How do we deal with the TARDIS if it's her as a time challenge kind of thing too? Just something swirling around the TARDIS that's emanating some kind of thing until the actual god kind of appears over the top of it. You don't know that either. So like so many different little puzzle pieces that start to click into place. And now we look back and we're like, yep, they did it. They told us from this point forward. But
I will say Sutekh is looking a lot better nowadays than original.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
CGI magic. I wonder if we'll see some good cosplay of that.
Sutekh has always been a fascinating, like you'll see some cosplayers that do, because the headpiece was just so big. And the pool noodle epaulets on the shoulders and things, it was a fun thing to build. So every once in a while you'd see a really great Sutekh, but this new one is pretty wild. Have fun with 4 practical eyes on a dog face and everything. The thing that I'm wondering right now is how the banishment and the return ties into the whole thinning of the veil that we've been talking about throughout, and how the mistake, if it was the Doctor's mistake at the edge of creation that caused all these things to start to happen, and how that allowed Sutekh to return. He was like flung into the future, right? The whole thing was like this, the end of Pyramids was that he was tricked or sort of trapped and manipulated by this gizmo that the Fourth Doctor pulls together at the last moment, is able to sort of seal him away in the far-flung future. How that allowed him to return. And not just return, but return with so much pomp and circumstance. You've got harbingers. You've got, you're bringing your whole mythos with you. Look, I brought all my freaky kids, Yeah, but what was, are we going to get the mechanism? Is that going to be part of the villain's exposition to explain, so that it's Russell's opportunity to say, here's what I've been doing to you throughout, whether or not you sussed it? Or is it just... I
imagine so. I feel like that is a, I don't know if trope is the right word, but that is a thing that Doctor Who does so that it's believable and you can track it and give it a reason or a cause. And we get a lot of pseudoscience, but I need reasons behind that sometimes. So I would hope so. Somehow this god has been communicating to its children as well, though, which is very interesting. Like they all know what god channel, group text you got to be on.
Right. What my sirens are calling.
Which, speaking of, so at that moment when you get a second H. Arbinger, we got that with Maestro, which, and in that episode, would anyone have pinned the name Harbinger as something that would carry through and be introduced again, or more of it. I immediately just thought I knew it wasn't going to be Maestro again, but the fact that it was dropped for Maestro specifically, then well, I guess what is the connection there? And do we think it's just because it's harbingers of the doom and the death of the universe? And then, how did that play out?
They just all have harbingers
kind of coming up.
So now we can never trust anybody with an H name until we know their last name.
Right. Yeah. Going back and watching it a second time, it was like they just refer to her as Harriet. And it's like, that should have been a red flag. Like everyone else is referred to by their surname except for like Kate. But I mean, the fact that it's just Harriet, like I should have picked up on it and I didn't.
Which I think having the cast of all of the unit people, so we added a lot of new faces in that room. I think if it had just been her as a new character in there, that would have also been another giveaway. But because you had Morris and the two new officers and some of that introduced, and with Rose as another not distraction. Obviously, she's there for a purpose, but all of them introduced at the same time. I thought that was a really clever way to allow for Harriet to be there and not all of a sudden just go, who's that suspicious person?
Mm-hmm. Right.
She had no suspicion. The fact that she was there to work the archives, that's what popped my ears. Was okay, archives. So that's where they put the toy maker when he was packed away. That's where they probably put, if you want to go with the theory that Kate picked up the gold tooth, if we're still running with that because she's still sporting that red nail polish even in this story. So if she's got that on hand, and that might be something that could be a wild aspect of what gets added to the finale is that, all right, one Time Lord isn't enough to deal with this right now because the Time Lords were always considered more powerful than the Osirans, but only just. So, but a single Time Lord is not going to be enough. We need another. So, okay, let's crack the tooth.
It took two to beat the toy maker as well because we had two doctors there.
Bingo.
And did David Tennant Doctor get brought back in at the end?
I don't think so. I think my feeling in my heart and every tone I've gotten from every interview with everybody involved with those specials has said this was something so that people can just kind of enjoy whatever they want for 10/14's remaining years to be and just be. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if they'd see him back. As
we
14.
get a hint to him. How are you? How's your mom? How's your uncle?
Yeah. With Harriet listing off all of the different members of the Pantheon of Discord, I mean, obviously, we know the Toy Maker and the Maestro we've seen this season. The Trickster we got from the Sarah Jane Adventures. We've seen Malice. We've seen Mara. Do we think there's a chance that we're going to see some of these return again? Or do you think they might lean into the ones that we haven't seen, like the Reprobate or the Incensor? Or have we seen those and I'm completely forgetting?
No, we haven't seen the Incensor. That's the Reprobate, unless that was sort of referred to as somebody else.
The God of Spite is who Reprobate was.
Right. I think it's a matter of those things were included to sort of fill out, to make for that massive moment, because just the text alone on that, the Harbinger's Beckon, was insane. I mean, that's some heavy, dark stuff, and that adds so much gravity to the sequence, as you already knew things were getting intense because all of these pieces were just where they needed to be at that very moment. The editing was beautiful. And then to have that dark sentiment running under the entire thing was just, I think, part of the palette. I think it would be complicated to add them in this final.
I'm not saying in this final bit, but like moving forward, do you think that the Pantheon is going to be the main big bad of the series for a while?
It would allow for similar stories because Maestro was a big bad, but I feel like it feels more like it's this god claiming all of its children. And so the ones we've seen this season, the ones we've seen previous seasons or series, and then anything else to just build that, build the gravitas of it and make it more. Like there are others you haven't even heard of as viewers and whether the Doctor has or not, we don't really know, because there's a lot of times stuff the Doctor knows that we don't. And so that wait for us to just hear this huge list that we have no prior experience with, some of them, I think that's what it's for more. I mean, it certainly could be, but I think it would be a letdown for the weight of the ones we have already seen. And then this, unless we don't see a defeat or a solve for this Sutekh in this next episode, then I feel like that's too much of an open book.
Well, I think Sutekh has been built up over the course of this season as the most powerful of them all, the old one. Like even when Maestro was talking about Sutekh, it was as if he was the most dangerous and powerful of them all. So I kind of think what happens is in the next half of this story, with the resolution of Ruby's story, we're also going to get the resolution of Sutekh, and the genie's kind of going to get put back in the bottle for now. So the Doctor's going to do something to lock away Sutekh, and it's going to prevent these others from being a problem for a while. Like, obviously not forever, because you always want it to be, we've won for now. But I don't think next season is going to be more of this pantheon. I think we're going to move on to the next thing next season. And then, maybe 10 years down the road when RTD is taking over the show for the third time, he brings something else back.
I agree. This one has to have a cap on it next week, because if it doesn't, then I think things have hit such a fever pitch right now that if it isn't resolved, then you can't have fun adventures next season until this is tended to. There's no way that you can say, yeah, okay, hold on. I know I have this mission to do, but I want to go collect flowers for like just 45 minutes, if that's okay.
Which is, then you just get a series like The Flux, where it's everything's heavy, everything's major, and it's not an open-ended series of you're going to have some ups and downs and some monster of the week and some other stuff like that. So I would hope that is the case.
I'm kind of rolling with the idea of the bringing the master into the mix, because that finishes the story, gives you a solution, and then gives the next season something to look forward to as I can't wait to see this new actor in this role play this out, because we were promised no master in this season, no Daleks, no Cybermen. We're getting away from that for a little while, and then that can allow that sort of mess to come back next season, now that you've got a new crop of fans. I gotta tip my hat in this one, and this isn't just a tip. This is almost like I'm down to a knee and genuflecting to Gemma Redgrave for this story. She's incredible from the moments where she's having the warmth exchanges with the Doctor, remembering her father and the conversations. He mentioned a lot of things. He never mentioned a granddaughter. To her, like, diving into business mode when necessary, the lockdowns and the security protocols and all those things, to just having to take in we've seen this a couple times before, when a unit officer is downed, and she has to, she circles the wagons kind of thing, but it's in this very, we notice that she always remembers the full names of everyone on her staff and things like that. One of her first things is to notify family. It's just an amazing character. And Gemma just puts so much into it it seems like she's not even working that hard. It just happens. And it's just incredible to watch.
It was an incredible balance of watching, because she does a great job of showing Kate's heart and that she does feel deeply, but also being able to show that she is 100% in charge of unit and doing it well. And that it's difficult to strike that balance of being a character that can get down to business at the flip of a switch, but also has feelings and emotions and a heart to them. So yeah, it was tremendous.
Yeah, her micro expressions and just the way that she reacts to things verbally as well as physically is fantastic. And seeing, Kier, you mentioned the moment where she says gently, my father used to talk about you all the time in front of the fire, but he never mentioned this. And you hear it in her voice of kind of that accusing tone. And I think obviously it's in part of the timeline that went away, but her explanation to Ruby in 73 Yards saying the Doctor is both the most exciting and the most untrustworthy person. You get that played out in this single episode where it's so exciting as soon as he's back. They have some of those moments, but then when they're in the time window and she's saying, don't let him move, but then trusts the doctor. And then you can see on her face, the doctor has dropped some of that, but then not even within the next 60 minutes before the airing of the episode. And the doctor says, get Ruby back to the time window. And Ruby asks why. And Kate immediately says, you don't ask questions, you do it. In these times of we're trying to solve this puzzle and the doctor's telling you to do something, you just go do it. And Ruby's trying to understand and has a different relationship with the doctor than Kate does. And so seeing that juxtaposition of two people who have utmost respect, but how they react to the doctor and her playing that out in that moment is just so masterful in the writing team and her delivery.
And the moment when Carla comes and gets stuck downstairs, and Kate is very much just like, this is like the highest security. You can't just bring your mom. And the doctor being like, yeah, but it's Carla. Come on. And Kate's like resignation, you can see the frustration there, but also realizing there's no point in fighting it. He's made his decision. Like, it was great.
And the flip side of that, of you specifically told us in the 1970s that we were not allowed to play at the time. Yeah, it's 2/4 sound. It's fine. Like the petulant child and the parent of all of this thing, all the sides, all the
but
facets
also making it very clear, like, even if the doctor has rules for them, like, they're still going to do their own thing. Like, they're not supposed to have this. The doctor knows they have it. And Kate did have it explicitly against his orders. So we've seen this before, but she will still do what she thinks is right, even if the doctor has told her not to.
Mm-hmm.
They both will do whatever they believe is right in any circumstance. And as long as you have that understanding, they each recognize that it is for what they believe is the better good, and they forgive. It's 100% a bunch of asking for forgiveness.
They line up more often than they don't, so they just deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. But him walking through and being like seriously kind of taking it in, and for 1 second you think this is a moment of like, hey, you guys did a good job. No, he just starts laughing. This is rough. And
I love the camera placement on that too, is because it puts him front and center in the foreground, and you can see the four characters standing behind him with various expressions of, okay, this is, one of them is looking at it and taking it in. Wow, look at all this tech and so on. There's a little bit of pride on Kate's face, saying, we've done this based on, this is the bleeding edge of unit's development here, and
without input from the doctor. I would imagine that there's some stuff that they've built with cooperation, but this was like, we need to hide it somewhat. And now.
Oh, precisely. For nearly 50 years, they're told, don't mess with this stuff. Of course, we're messing with this stuff. And then that, and the dialogue hangs on Ncuti for that 1 second. And then he busts out. That's so clever. I love infectious laughs to begin with. I mean, that's the reason why they are what they are. But the fact that that's the only person laughing and everyone else standing behind, it has various reactions to that. I love those kind of sequences.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really lashed this together.
Ncuti in this episode was again just a tour de force. He was fantastic in like every scene he was in, but also not overpowering to the point where you really could enjoy the performances of the ensemble.
Which I would say. One of the major things that really stood out to me is Carla in the time window and her care, and feeling that emotion of, I've got her, I saved her, she's good. But I think on the, I don't want to say flip side, but like another aspect of that is when she asks for Mrs. Flood to come and stay with Cherry. And I don't know what she'll go home to. And that's something that they said, take her home, and she tries to push back on Ruby a tiny bit. And Ruby says, well, what do you want from me? You're not helping. You need to go. What is there? Because the storm was coming in. So who is Mrs. Flood? That reveal came on pretty early, and the storm rolling in, which maybe or maybe not Unit was tracking, something like that. That seemed like a pretty big storm for the UK. I don't know. Like, it was pretty dark clouds. Like,
it came in very quickly too.
Yes.
From the south, from the sands of Egypt, you might say.
Right. Yes, exactly. So, but who is Mrs. Flood in all of this? Because she knew something was coming. Is she the embodiment of it? How adjacent to the other old white woman are we going to see that come through? And leaving Cherry there, what is going to happen to the Sunday family?
I mean, my one thought for Mrs. Flood is like maybe she is the Flood, a potential servant of Sutek, one of the biggest destructive elements in human history.
I like that.
One of the things came up. It was like, what's going to happen to Cherry? And I was like, Cherry will be fine because if anything happens to her, we will freaking riot.
Yeah.
She must be fine, no question. However, what else would you like to tell me about the next story?
I roll with that, Haley, but the idea of her just being, she's not one of the harbingers. She's not one of the minions. She's not one of the human vessels like they used back with Scarman back in Pyramids and things like that. That was more Susan's role for Triad. In fact, the resemblance was very similar to the sunken eyes. Granted, makeup has come a long way since 1978 or whatever it was. But yeah, I think, Julie, I think you and I both, there was an intake of breath the moment that Carla said, why don't you just ring Mrs. Flood and ask her? No,
Hey, don't do that. No.
this is going to be a bad thing. Don't let her in the house.
Yeah.
She knows something.
And up to that moment of her turn, we didn't know if it was positive or negative because we've had a lot of theories about who she is. She's seen a TARDIS before. She knows what the Doctor is, the coming of all of that. If she's been the plant kind of by Sutek this time as the vision or someone to watch through, then that would have been part of why now all of this is happening to the Doctor since Ruby and the Doctor started traveling.
She just, when we first met her, she did not seem like a malevolent force, which I guess that's the best bad guys, the one you don't see coming. But when Ruby was getting into the TARDIS, back in her first episode, she seemed friendly and supportive, and like I still want that to be who she turns out to be. Like we're gonna question her in this episode because of the reveal we already had of Susan Twist, but it would be, I think, good if she were something else completely.
It's just the moment of Cherry in the bed and saying, I'd like a cup of tea. And she goes, well, we all like things we're not going to get. And then she looks out to the window and says, it's coming. He's done waiting. Or I forget exact line, but yeah.
Just denying Cherry a cup of tea. You're
not
already
real
evil
good
enough.
I mean, I still think it's entirely possible that she's Susan. Like, I think that is still a possibility.
That's wild. Yeah, and you would run with the Ronnie theory before, too, because Ronnie, rain, flood, but...
Well, also
I think
river.
It could just be a matter of...
water elements.
Yeah, okay. Gee, if only we had some rather enigmatic characters on this show to give us something to chew on. But Jay, back to your point about Shudi's performances on this and sort of finding how far do you run with certain reactions without overpowering scenes and things. And I think this is partially his choices in the sequence and partially just the way the scenes were structured. That I see that best exemplified in as they're waiting for the lift, and he's with Mel, and they're trying to get up to Susan, and all these things are rattling through his head, and he's starting to slip, and starts bashing at the elevator doors and things, which is we've seen rage from numerous doctors before. We've seen helplessness. We've seen breakdowns of various sorts. But this is something that I like what Shudi's doing in these choices, and that's that idea of the it's panic, but it's frustration as well, because it's almost there's more pieces to this puzzle, and I'm not seeing it. There's something missing. These mysteries are something that I'm not able to parse out, and it becomes a physical anger, but then he very quickly shuts it down, just slides down the wall. And that allows Bonnie to have that fantastic moment to come in like, oh, am I going to tend to you for a second? Nice. Slap across the face. Buck up, get up, fix it. Do this. This is what you're here for, which is so much what we need Mel for. And I'm so glad that they chose Bonnie in particular to be that returning past companion to do it. Because from Tegan, it might come across like acidic, or from Ace, it might not have the same
punch
impact because Ace has never been the caretaker character. But Mel was always Mel. She's sweet. She's bonkers. And oh no. And then smack, that verbal lashing that he takes snaps him out of it.
Yeah. That was one of the moments that I loved about this episode was Mel being able to just be like, okay, give yourself a moment. You're okay. We're calm. Good. Get your stuff together. Let's go. We've got a job. It was that kind of, it was exactly what the Doctor needed in that moment. And it was perfect.
That's been her from her earliest sequences back in with 6. It's one of the reasons why they couldn't, the characters rubbed each other so badly was because she's, all right, you get on the exercise bike. You've got work to do. You're getting a little around the midsection here. Let's, carrot juice here, take that. And she seemed flippy at times, but she had an agenda. She knew how to get stuff done. Susan Twist as an actor. You just get to see her in these little vignettes, these little moments, playing these little characters. Like she's in some sort of a little rep group, playing a different character every week as we go down to the town library and do a little panto or something. But now we get a whole episode with her. I think she's phenomenal. I just kind of love the life she was putting behind this. I wish all technology billionaires were an actually likable person.
Surprisingly.
Surprisingly a nice person. But I really hope she does the con circuit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I think the fans
for sure.
would love
that would
her.
be really fun. Yeah. As her character reveal, it was really fun for Unit to know that they were piping in the pre-screen test of that speech, and the Doctor to, oh, this hasn't happened yet. This is, I think we all thought that. We're like, oh, that was really good. And then boom, switch of that. And getting to see her interactions with some of her staff, with some of the others. And then that switch when she sees the Doctor and he asks one question, how are you feeling, or whatever he said. And she says, I'd like to get more sleep. What does that mean? That kind of change in her feels pretty quick, but those were kind of the key words, and the escalation of that feeling and the reveal at the end. How do we, as you said, we actually got to see her do it, but do we feel like that was a good reveal? Did it feel any clunkiness to it at all?
I think the way that they edited it with, everything going on at Unit, with the Doctor trying to pay attention to that and her having that breakdown, and all of the chaos that surrounded it kept it from being clunky. There was enough going on that you weren't focused on any particular thing that might have stuck in your craw. There was too much to try and track. So I think they did a great job with it, just in the way that it was scripted and edited.
And really striking a balance of making it happen fast without it feeling forced. Like you were saying, it comes down to like the scripting and the editing and making it a chaotic moment so that things could happen fast.
And we were already a bit suspicious of her for various reasons, positively or negatively, but we knew there was something going on. And Kate had already floated the chrysalis theory, which sort of prepped our brains for something to happen, something to flip or trigger. So we were kind of already on tenterhooks a bit.
But that it was also someone standing in the room next to them makes it that much better. If you didn't have that, it's like, oh, okay, in the other area. But this is someone in the room, in HQ, and the TARDIS is flipping out with the god grabbing onto it.
You had to have it from multiple fronts in order for it to be the imminent threat for everyone.
Yes. So now they cannot be touched. They don't have control of the TARDIS. We don't know how powerful the Sutekh head in HQ will be. Where do we see this going? Do we have anything that we want to make a guess or a future prediction of any kind? Or are we just going to wait and see how it plays out with everyone in their separate spaces?
I don't want to float predictions, but I love the fact that as we're getting to this panic conclusion, the Doctor is not there, that they are split at the moment. This is classic Who, right? Where the Doctor is dealing with something at one point with a capable assistant or partner of sorts. And then your primary companion or companions are somewhere else dealing with something equally as dangerous. Which one of those is, how much of, we could see that Sutek's ability to kill can come right through the vessel of Susan Triad. But is that thing over the TARDIS, is that a manifestation of Sutek? Is that Sutek proper? Does he have a physical form, or where is the greatest danger? Does it even matter, or we're dealing with everything everywhere all at once?
I think they've done a good job of making it so that I can give you 10 different theories. All of them are just as likely as any others, and probably none of them are accurate. So at this point, I'm counting down the days to Friday, and I want to see how it wraps up.
Did you know there's a Redditor out here? As we've been talking, I checked to see who was out there actually floating the Sutek theory, and there was a Redditor that called it 2 months ago in detail, which makes me wonder if they actually had inside knowledge or not. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that. But they're prevailing theories about how this is going to be resolved. One of them has to do with Mrs. Flood, and the other has to do with Ruby's identity.
What pieces did they put together to figure out Sutek at that point?
They did the setup, the talking about the one who waits, and the fact that Sutek's only appearance which was in the Pyramids of Mars story, is that he's trapped in the Eye of Horus and imprisoned, waiting, right? And then the salt incident in Wild Blue Yonder, I guess, is something that RTD had said that had actually mentioned that Maestro are part of the pantheon of gods that were being introduced. Well, technically introduced, we have seen them before, but introduced into the modern era. But if you watch, they started cottoning onto it when you started watching all the trailers that the media team had been releasing over the course of the season, and then with every one of them, there was dust floating throughout. This coming episode, this finale, which is called Empire of Death, which we've known the titles of all of the episodes.
Yeah,
I did not. Spoiler. No, I'm just kidding.
It's written in your TV guide, Julie. It was that at the end of Pyramids, or as we're getting towards the climax of Pyramids, Sutek had promised the Doctor that he was bringing an empire, and he is technically the god of death. So the noises is from the TARDIS. Those TARDIS groans are what I wanted to figure out, because I think the first time we heard that was it in the Giggle? The first time
the
Donna
Wild
stops
Blue Yonder.
Was it in Yonder?
After it crashes and they're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen next.
That's interesting, because at that point, the Doctor hadn't actually made the mistake of the salt in the thing. That's unusual.
From that clip, I believe that was the moment that we were seeing.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. But yeah, we should check that out.
What I like about this person's theory about Mrs. Flood is that they're calling it that Mrs. Flood is the monk.
The meddling monk?
Yeah. I don't think that's got merit to it, but just anything.
I know what you want.
Bring him back.
Yeah.
So this isn't the first time I picked up on it. I feel like they've been saying no more a lot this season. Like those two words specifically together, no more. I also feel like I remember that being a thing in previous seasons, but my spiderweb-filled brain can't find the information. Does anybody else remember that being a thing before?
I mean,
outside
from
the
the
50th?
the 50th anniversary special.
But like as a thing that could come back.
Although, speaking about returning phrases, that we've been commenting for a couple of our episodes now, or at least I know I noted it, and I think everyone was kind of picking up on it too, that they've been putting the expression, oh my God, oh God, God, which is something they don't normally put a lot in the script. Okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
I'm a God, I'm not the God.
But if you're calling it more and more times, like you manifest it, and that becomes something that is more powerful when it arrives. So we'll see what happens.
Hidden in plain sight. Well, as we've placed it, this is 101% a trap. No, it's a 100% prediction time. So we would like to turn it over to you to help all of us try and decipher how this deific threat is going to be contained or eliminated or kicked down the road for 10 years, as Haley wants to see happen. So the comments, the feedback emails, the voicemails, you have but days to get in touch, connect with us and the rest of the GPR community, and name that solution.
Well, this has been Gallifrey. Damn it. This has been episode 525 of Gallifrey Public Radio. Until next time, this is Jay saying, I don't know where we're going. I need the solution now.
And this is Kira saying, like grains of sand through the hourglass, these are the last days of our lives.
This is Julie saying, gold protocols, everyone. Positions. Podcast ears open.
And this is Haley saying, I'm Haley. Haley Arbinger.
We'll see you next time.
Alzi.
Tag, you're it.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Gallifrey Public Radio. As a fan-run podcast, your thoughts and opinions are part of the conversation. Leave us a comment or review on your preferred podcast app, find us on social media to message us, or visit GallifreyPublicRadio.com for email and voicemail contacts. We'll see you out there in time and space.
Hi, this is Jacob. This recording of Gallifrey Public Radio is copyrighted in 2024. GPR is a fan-owned, fan-produced podcast. We'll see you next time!